Yo guys, today we're going to be looking at Danganronpa's most unpopular characters. Now in a community poll, I asked you guys what videos you wanted to see, and there were a few comments, but one I did see more than the others, by just a little bit, was talking about underrated characters, underappreciated characters, or unpopular characters, so I thought, yeah, why not? It would be a good idea to talk about some of the less liked characters in the series, so I decided to pick 5 from each game. Now the hard part was to actually pick those unpopular characters, because in this day and age, with all these different opinions, it's a little hard to say who's unpopular and who's not. But hey, I tried, and for the first game, I went with Sayaka, Leon, Hifumi, Yasuhiro, and Toko. Yeah, so I decided to include the Danganronpa 1 version of Toko here, because I feel like she gets overlooked. Obviously after Despair Girl, she becomes much more popular, but there's a lot going on with her in the first game, so I decided to put her here. I was also considering Makoto, but the opinion on Makoto is so varied that I don't even know what the general consensus with this character is. Like, you'll have all the haters say he's just the most boring character all the time, but you'll also have all the hardcore Makoto fans in the comment section. Like, you don't know how many people I see impersonate the guy. Honestly, there might be more Makoto Naegi profiles than Nagito Komeida ones from my experience, so yeah. Also, I was thinking of making a video on him later, so if I do, I just want to hold on to my thoughts and let them out later. Well, anyway, let's start with Sayaka. Sayaka's really hated by most of the fandom, and she's honestly my favorite character out of all the characters that died in the first chapter. Yes, she dies really quickly, but she gets a lot of screen time before she goes. I honestly feel like she gets more screen time than Mukuro, Leon, and Chihiro, because a good chunk of chapter 1 is talking to Sayaka. The reason people hate Sayaka is because she backstabs Makoto because she wants to make sure her friends are okay. Now that's a valid reason, but what I find weird is how so many other characters can do deranged things and get away with it, but for some reason when Sayaka does it, it's just the worst thing in the world. I like how she starts off as the sweet, innocent girl, but as the game goes on, we slowly start to see another side of her. She's very career focused, doing whatever it takes to become an idol, even unpleasant things. I will leave those unpleasant things up to your interpretation. She feels very realistic for an ultimate student, because for most of her life, she focused on everything oriented around her career. And that's what drove her to kill in the first place. Her idol friends were only the last straw. Throughout her conversations in the game, Sayaka is already going crazy because she can't focus on her career. It's basically her life, and Monokuma took that away from her. This other side of Sayaka made her much more interesting. There's even some ambiguity in the end where it's possible that Sayaka was hesitating to kill, and that's the reason why her plan failed, and why she may have written Leon's name. I also like how the game showed she noticed Makoto. I feel like some people don't realize that she was actually very interested in Makoto. Like, some people think she was just gonna backstab Makoto from the start, but I don't think that's the case. First of all, she took the time to remember who Makoto actually was in a school of many people. She thought Makoto was admirable for helping a huge crane that got stuck in the school pond when no one else in the school attempted to. I like how she's a genuinely nice person, with her weakness being her commitment to her talent. This leads nicely into Leon. Leon is the perfect character for a first killer, especially for the first game. I like how the game doesn't try to give us a sad backstory to make us cry for him. The game makes his actions morally gray, just like they do with Sayaka. It wasn't self-defense. He didn't need to kill Sayaka, but he did. Was it because of fear? Was it because of his motive? Probably a combination of both, but I like how this isn't revealed. It's hard to label Leon as good or bad, because we don't know much about what he was thinking. I also like his free time events quite a bit. This is a guy who's naturally talented at baseball, but hates it because everyone in his life pushes him towards baseball. I like the contrast between Sayaka and Leon here. While Sayaka worked hard to get her talent and devoted her life to her talent, Leon didn't work to get his talent and sees his talent as a burden. Instead, Leon wants to become a musician to get girls, but later there's another twist, and we learn that he actually likes baseball. It makes a lot of sense because if you're good at something, you're going to like it. It's hard to explain, but it's definitely something I've noticed, and I feel like anyone can relate to Leon on a smaller scale. He's probably one of my least favorite characters from the first game, just because I do think him being the first killer and dying so fast and not knowing too much about him doesn't really work in his favor as a character. And I'm also generally a person who favors the main story events and the character interactions over the free time and backstory, so that's why he's not one of my favorites, but he does his job well. Next is Hifumi, and I think I can confidently say he is the most unpopular character out of all the main students. I mean, I did a poll to see who would win between the characters I deemed to be the most unpopular, and Teru streamrolled him, so yeah, this one was easy. Now, I do like the comic relief Hifumi provides. The fact that he claims he only likes 2D but very clearly also likes 3D is funny. Hifumi really shines when he interacts with certain characters. One of these characters is Toko. The dialogue between these two in chapter 2 are some of the funniest lines because they're so similar yet they hate each other. It's just really funny seeing these two literary geniuses battling it out. And it's also more funny when you realize they're both simps and very open about it. In chapter 2, he openly reveals that Celeste is his type and proceeds to do anything for Celeste, while Celeste yells at him, which is basically what happens with Toko later on. Him getting freaked out at Celeste yelling is also really funny. As you can see, I mostly view Hifumi as a comic relief character, but he does have other things going for him, such as his delusion of being the hero, as we saw in chapter 3 where he kinda saw Ishimaru as the villain, but he also has this problem of loneliness. When he interacts with Alter Ego, he's obsessed, and he's obsessed because no one else gives him attention. You can even see this with the main cast. I mean, no one really goes up and talks to Hifumi other than Makoto, but Makoto's the player, and the player talks with everyone. So when no one gives him attention, he resorts to fiction. I also do like his goal. His goal is to create something original, and he wants to give an escape to other people, just like how Demon Angel Princess gave an escape to him. But overall, he's still one of my least favorites in the game. I don't think he got enough for a character that went away in chapter 3. And also, I think his gullibleness should have been toned down just a bit. Like, if they established the extent of his gullibleness beforehand, then it would have been fine. But once you got to chapter 3 and you heard the plan, that just felt a little too weird to me. He wasn't established to be like a dumb character, so yeah, once I heard what happened in chapter 3, it was a bit iffy. Next is Yasuhiro, one of my personal favorites, and probably still my favorite from the first game, and maybe even the entire series. He changed the tone of the game completely. It might seem like he does nothing for the game as a whole, but Trigger Happy Havoc would be a lot darker, and the late game would change entirely if Yasuhiro didn't exist. Comic relief can be done in many ways, but I really like how it's handled with Yasuhiro. There's a lot of variation to it. It isn't just the same thing every time. For example, when he's introduced, he just seems like this laid-back dude who isn't worried about anything. He seems fairly normal. The one time he says something weird in his intro is played off as a joke. And then the killing game begins, and oh, look at that, he's still chilling. He's one of the least scared members of the cast, until the other characters have to spell it out for him, and he finally loses his mind. This is one of my main reasons for loving Yasuhiro. He's scared as hell, and I wouldn't expect anything less if you're in a killing game. He reminds me of Usopp, who is easily my favorite One Piece character. What's better is that his paranoia actually leads to some negative consequences. His flaws actually have an impact on the game, and all of the fears from chapters 1 to 3 and the motive in chapter 4 leads to him lashing out, which I thought was really interesting. The paranoia and fear element is easily one of my favorite things about the first game, and it delivers on that a lot. Obviously that fear never goes away, but I wouldn't expect it to. He realizes his mistake in chapter 4, but still acts scared because it's just a natural reaction to the situation he's in. Other than that, his comedy is just gold. The UFO scene, the 5 chickens, the disses at Toko. Yes, he has the occult is fake and his low prediction accuracy as some of his main gimmicks, but he has so much more in his arsenal that makes him more fun to watch. Also, I even find his free time events funny now. He's somehow smart enough to scam people, maybe it's not even that he's smart, it's just there are a lot of dumb people out there. But then he spends that money on the most idiotic things. Not only that, this guy got into trouble with the Yakuza, Fuyuhiko's sister to be exact, and now he's being hunted down. So he's trying to get Makoto to sell his organs, which is just funny for some reason. Like, I want to see an episode of him scamming Fuyuhiko's sister. That would be really fun to watch. He's also a foreshadowing device, and he works pretty well that way, so yeah, probably my favorite, but let's end this. Finally, we have Toko. I think Toko gets overlooked a lot in this game. There are even some aspects in which I think Toko is better here than in UDG. Like in this game, you get less of Toko fantasizing, which is a big plus. UDG goes way off the deep end with Toko, and oh my god, like, let me tell you, that was not fun. The Byakuya fantasies, no, just get that out. Get that out of the game. Why did they put those in? What I do like about Toko is how she integrates into the group. She starts off really distant, she clearly has self-esteem issues, and overall, you don't get to see her a lot in the beginning of the game because she's hiding Genocide Jack. You get to see the paranoia a lot with her, especially in Chapter 2. Now, I'm not including Genocide Jack because Genocide Jack is actually quite popular, but I think Genocide Jack makes Toko herself more interesting because it's her split personality. I think it's implied how the split personality came to be in her free time events. It has been a while, so I don't remember the exact details, but I do remember free time events being one of the more fun ones. I also like the transitions between her and Genocide Jack. The switch ups are usually really funny. She has her own disses at the other classmates, and she gets into fights with a lot of them, such as Hiro and Aoi, which are really fun to see. What's also really good is she slowly becomes friends with all of them. One prime example that I remember is when she looks really worried for Makoto in Chapter 5. She still roasts them, but by the end, you have this really nice push and pull effect from Toko that I really like. Her interactions with Byakuya, or lack thereof, also show her self-esteem issues very nicely, and she fits with the cast of DR1, and that's why she's another one of my personal favorites. So that's it with the unpopular characters of Danganronpa 1. My other considerations here were Makoto and Mukuro, but by the end, I decided that it had to be these 5. If you think someone else deserved to be here, I'm sorry about that, but from my experience, it felt like these 5 were the bottom of the barrel. But next time, we are going to look at the Danganronpa 2 cast, and I'm already struggling with the 5 that I have to choose, so yeah, that'll be fun. See you guys next time.